Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Chloe the Elven Mage, your multi-dimensional mentor. Welcome to the weird and wonderful world of Mystic Hearts. And welcome back to another episode of Coffee Shop Chats, where I invite you to join me in an intimate space where we talk about some of the deeper, perhaps more personal and taboo topics in a safe and non-judgmental space. Now, I have just had a cup of coffee, so I'm going to stick with water today. You'll have to excuse me, I'm still recovering from being ill, so I sound like I've smoked 1,000 cigarettes. If you do want to join me with your drink of choice, feel free to pause the video now and grab a hot drink, a cold drink, whatever you choose. Towards the end of this video, we are going to be doing an interactive practice. So just bearing that in mind, if you are grabbing a beverage, you may want to choose something that can support you in opening your heart or coming into more of a calm state of being. Just bearing that in mind. And of course, the interactive part is totally optional. You may find that you watch the first half and want to come back to the interactive part of the video at a later date. So, thank you so much for the suggestion to do this video. Today, we are going to be exploring all things shadow work. And for those of you who asked questions and asked for this video, thank you. You know who you are. So last week, I released a video of an interview with my shadow, which was totally unplanned and just totally spontaneous and ad hoc. And this is going to be explaining that a little bit more and just really diving in more deeply to what shadow work is. It's one of those spiritual words that gets thrown around a lot, especially in the social media space and in group settings and all those types of things. But it's all well and good talking about shadow work, but what does it actually mean? So that is what we're going to be exploring today, and helping others to face their fears, face and overcome their fears is one of my superpowers, and it is one of the main goals of my mission. And shadow work is something that works very closely alongside that, facing fears. So I've collected a few questions that I'm going to do in my usual kind of discussion, interview style, and then we'll go on to the interactive practice where we can actually practice doing a little bit of shadow work together. I was just about to say something and I totally lost it then. I think when we say the word shadow work, it brings up a lot of fear instantly in people. They automatically think it's going to be some traumatic, demonic, dark experience. But when someone asks me what is shadow work, well, what I would say shadow work is, from my own experience, is taking a very honest look at the parts of ourselves that we perhaps are hiding from or that we don't want to admit are there. It's noticing our own habits, our tendencies, and this is on every level: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, our memories. It's noticing that, and there's layers to shadow work, because there is owning up to things perhaps that we don't like about ourselves and we want to change. And I would say that that is more personal growth. Wonderful to admit to the things that we don't like about ourselves and that we want to change them. But that in itself could be a shadow, thinking that there's constantly things wrong with ourselves that we need to constantly change. Shadow work is deeper than that. It's giving a voice to those parts of ourselves that we are ignoring or hiding from or pretending that are not a part of us, and liberating them and owning them, rather than trying to constantly change everything, actually holding ourselves in our full spectrum of both darkness and light. And also seeing if, when we do recognize those habits and tendencies and things about us that we ignore or we hide or we run from or we distract from, or we have addictions to mask over them, can we get to the root of it? Can we get to the root of that so that we can really understand ourselves so deeply and hold compassion for ourselves and just be like, this is me. Oh my God, this is me, and that's okay. And what I've found about shadow work is the more that I become comfortable with talking about parts of myself that previously I would never dream of sharing, the more that I realize that it's just totally normal. And why I believe it's called shadow work is because when we keep certain parts of ourselves hidden in the shadows, it weighs us down and it holds us back. So shadow work is actually bringing light and love and illumination and acknowledgement into those dark, heavy parts of us to integrate ourselves into our wholeness and into our fullness. And I can say this wholeheartedly from my own experience, that things that happened to me when I was younger, experiences that I've had, traumatic experiences, ways that I used to be, act, think, say, speak, that used to bring me so much shame, I now love those parts of me. And it's more than just a case of sending love to those parts of ourselves. It's a deeper integration. Got lipstick on my teeth. It's deeper than that. Those parts of us need to be felt. Sometimes an action needs to be taken to help to release that shadow into the light and into the forefront. So it's complex and multi-layered. I will read out the official Google description of shadow work because I actually quite liked it as well. So what is shadow work? According to the Google AI gathering of information, shadow work is uncovering hidden traits, fears and judgments, that's a good one, by asking what you avoid, what triggers you, what you dislike in others and yourself, and how past experiences shape your present reactions, with the intention of gaining greater self-awareness and healing. Beautiful. That's a great description. That really is the goal of it. Self-awareness. And a lot of people hide in the light, and that doesn't work because that creates a false sense of light, or they hide behind enlightenment. Often people do all the things to raise their vibration, which is fabulous, but there's still that darkness lurking in the shadows. And I see it more as a personal development practice. So it's a very human practice. It's an emotional practice. It's in the lower chakras. It's very human and very real. And I suppose I am at a slight advantage in my lifetime because I come from a personal development background. Personal development courses, workshops, weekends, weeks have always been in my close environment with family and with friends. So it's something that I've always been used to, really just taking a cold, hard, honest look at yourself in the mirror and just being like, oh my God, like I'm pretending to be something I'm not. That's really what it is. It's a very human practice that is so integral in supporting our spiritual development. Beautiful. And ironically, what I was saying earlier about people hiding behind the light or hiding behind enlightenment, ironically, that actually creates more darkness and more shadow because it creates more of a height for you to run away from the darkness. And ironically, on the flip side of that, the more that we hold our shadows and the more that we allow ourselves to be okay with that uncomfortable, shameful, painful parts of ourselves, the more enlightened, if you like, we become, the more we make space within to allow the light in. It's why it's so important. You cannot bypass this stuff. You can't skip this stuff. And it's where the real juicy experience of change can be felt and found quite quickly when you share something that has been weighing you down for a lifetime. When you actually share that and you let that shit go, it can feel like you're letting the weight of 1,000 lifetimes be lifted off your shoulders. And that also has a ripple effect down your ancestral line, up and down. Ripple to your parallel lives. Yeah, everything is connected. There's nothing more refreshing than having a conversation with someone who is totally aware of their own bullshit, who is totally open and secure in themselves, that you can just have a conversation about all of these things. Or if you can pull someone up and say, I really don't like the way that you did this or that you said that, and they say, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for highlighting that. That was not my intention, but let me reflect back on where that came from. So refreshing when people can just take responsibility for things said and things done without judgment and without being poisonous or defensive or without running and hiding. All of those trigger trauma responses, fight or flight, freeze or fawn. When we do shadow work, it can actually really help to come out of survival mode. Yeah, so it also builds this level of inner strength and inner trust as well, because we're no longer pretending and we're no longer hiding from ourselves. It's liberating. It's emotional healing. It's very, very, very much in the sacral chakra. Okay, so I've got some questions. So we'll do that and then I'll see if there's anything else I want to add on as well. So for those of you who are new here, welcome. Hello. If you do have any questions, please do drop them in the comments. I absolutely love creating content around people's questions or people's inquiries or what people want to know more about of. It's probably one of my favorite things to do, like designing content around questions, because then I know at least I might be entertaining and then hopefully a little bit educational or inspiring. So yeah, let me know. And if you are new here and you haven't watched my interview with the shadow and you want to watch it after this, I will link it to the end of this video. Please do watch it and let me know what you think and how it makes you feel. And I will be talking a little bit about that as well. So in the interview with my shadow, as I mentioned, it wasn't planned. I didn't even know the questions that I was going to ask my shadow. It was totally spontaneous. And a lot of people ask, and I always used to ask this as well, is how do you channel? Well, the first thing is you have to get out of your own way. The more, and this is, my experience, this might not be true for everyone, but the more that I try and plan things or force the hand, it's when I get in the way of it. So yes, it's a channeled video where I basically interviewed my shadow as a guest on my channel. And I put on a black hood and made it dark and aesthetically scary, just to make it fun. But it was me interviewing my shadow. And this comes on to the first question of, was I channeling? And if so, who was I channeling? And this is an amazing question. Especially when you're viewing this as a video and you see this hooded figure who has this deep voice. So yes, I was channeling, and I was giving a voice to my shadow. And so this is a part of me. So I was giving a voice to my shadow. So I was channeling my shadow. And to make that make sense, how I would see that would be my shadow, the way that I channeled it, would be the shadow side of my higher self. Because the messages that were coming through were wise and were insightful and were supportive. So I would say it was an aspect of my higher self that I was channeling with the intention of giving a voice to my shadows. So I hope that makes sense. That leads on to the next question, which is, do we have an entity in charge of our shadow stuff? In my experience, no. It is within us. It is a part of us. Our shadow, our light, and everything on the spectrum in between. Because if we think of it as a separate entity, then we are agreeing with duality and separation. Whereas what I feel that is one of the most powerful parts of shadow work is recognizing, embracing, and accepting that these shadows are a part of us. So it is that non-duality, unity consciousness, if you like. So you could say it's the other end of the spectrum of the highest self, or the highest self, speaking from the wounded parts of me. I like that one actually. So I would say I was channeling my higher self, and my higher self was speaking from my wounded parts, from my shadows, from my triggers, from my pain, all of those parts, all of those, we could say, darker or lower vibration emotions, and bringing a voice to that. So yeah, that's what I believe it to be. And I didn't call upon an entity, bearing that in mind as well. I did not call upon an entity. I set up a safe space and I had my hands on my heart. So I was talking to myself. I was in deep, loving conversation with my highest self, who was channeling and helping me to channel a voice from my shadows. I hope that is helpful. And just to go over that question again, do we have an entity in charge of our shadow stuff? I feel like I want to highlight this because any entity who you feel that is in charge of you is probably not an entity that you want to have around you. You should feel like you are the one in the driver's seat at all times. Otherwise you are releasing control into an unknown force. And we may ask, and this is a great question that I've just thought of in this moment, actually, it's not on my list. So what is the difference between our shadow and a low vibrational being, an entity attachment, a demonic attachment? Good question, right? Well, there's probably actually a lot of parallels between these two that cross over. When you have an entity that has taken over, who is in charge of you, it can be very, very difficult to make any changes. It can be very, very difficult to even recognize that there is something wrong. Entity attachments also feel draining, like they're taking your energy away, will make you feel tired, will make your thoughts feel unclear, whereas your shadow is actually a voice that will be coming and being like, oh, you shouldn't do that, that's scary. It's more of, your shadow is actually more of a voice of your wounded inner child. So it is more of a voice, it's more of a soft voice, not so much of a strong, suffocating or hateful voice. So, but it is hard, it's hard to discern between the two, and I feel like that's a whole nother topic of conversation about entity attachments. Yeah, I would say that is when you recognize in yourself very, very, very suddenly different behaviors, feeling of stuckness, like total stuckness, like you can't get out of it. Where, yeah, the voice of the shadow is old traits and habits and thought patterns that have been there for a very, very long time. It's like an old friend who is desperate for your attention. So I hope that helps to discern that. And then the next question, can we get in touch with our shadow and ask questions? Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone can. Like I said, the way that I did it was in a conversation with my higher self, but with the intention of giving a voice to my shadows. So we're going to do a practice shortly in this video where we're going to practice asking ourselves those questions. And what I would recommend for this is, as I bang on about all the time, is the power of the voice. And I feel this is why a lot of people actually really struggle with meditation. A lot of people say, I can't concentrate, my mind is busy and all of these things. And something that's really powerful for me in meditation is speaking out loud. So for example, if I'm doing a meditation where I'm setting up a safe space around myself, I always say it out loud. You know, I'm calling upon the light from source, calling upon the energy of the earth, creating this safe space around me. I use my voice to speak it into existence, because you remember, if you want to be able to ask questions to your shadow, to your higher self, to your guides, you've got to start getting comfortable with having conversations, not being stuck in the mind. We need to get that expression outside of the mind, because the mind is this incredibly highly intelligent software program that has been trained by our shadow our whole lives. And in order for us to change that and start getting our shadows out and coming to the light, we have to bring that energy outwards. So by having an outward conversation. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. And I feel that's why the video that I did was so powerful, because it was a spoken conversation, not planned. I just let the voice come out. And I will say, this takes practice. It absolutely takes practice. But practicing doing it on your own in a safe space where there's going to be no one around you listening in, laughing at you, judging you, not that people would anyway, but just getting rid of that thought from your mind and just practice having this conversation. And even if the first few times you do this, you're literally just asking yourself questions and the answers don't come, great. You're still setting the stage for that conversation. Give yourself time and patience and grace. We've got to start by getting comfortable with what feels uncomfortable. So if the thought of having a conversation with yourself is uncomfortable, start by just holding your hands on your heart and asking yourself some very simple questions. And don't even expect the answers to come. Just practice speaking out loud to yourself, eyes closed. So that's my advice. So I believe this was a question on the back of, do we have an entity in charge of our shadow stuff? And if so, do we all have one? Well, we all have shadows. And this is something I feel is quite important to highlight. Because so many people get to the point where they're like, oh my God, I've done all this healing work. I'm healed. I'm done. And for me personally, that is a huge red flag. Yes, the healing work is savage sometimes, but it's also liberating and brilliant and life-changing. The more we do it, I don't want to say the easier it gets, but the more easier it is to navigate through it, and the more interesting it becomes. That's definitely true. And the more that you come to accept that it is life's work. So yes, we do all have shadows. There is no holy enlightened one who has got rid of all his pain and trauma and shadows. We're all working through it. It's just getting to know ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper, so we can become more and more self-aware and more okay with these parts of ourselves that we so desperately keep under lock and key. And then the next question, this is a great question. Is shadow work facing and healing wounds from past lives? No. In my opinion, no. Past life healing, paralife healing, so important, paramountly important, because we can face blocks in our lives. I would say it's more about blocks. We can face blocks in our lives that no matter what we do, we just cannot overcome. And this is where past life healings can be incredible. Also for physical pain and illness and injury, past life healing. But it's very different to shadow work. Shadow work is, I would say a lot of it is inner child healing. A lot of it is inner child. Remember I said it's the voice of the inner child, that wounded child that just wants to be seen and loved and remembered and listened to and acknowledged. So yeah, I would actually say it is more personal development. And personal development has been around for so long. A lot of people call it new age, but it's integral. It's such an important part of balancing your spiritual healing with your very human healing. It just really helps you to, in a very grounded way, look at yourself and accept yourself for who you are, and then in turn look at others and accept others for who they are. So yeah, inner child healing, huge one. Mother and father healing. It's very much that, the foundational relationships that shaped and molded us into the person that we are. But also we can bring into shadow work traumas, traumatic experiences, situations that happened in our lives that have caused a knock-on effect for us to think, speak, act, react in a certain way. So I would say really powerful and integral shadow work is actually more of emotional healing. Emotional healing. It's getting to the root of those uncomfortable emotions. And also the letter to my ex was also a part of shadow work, because it came through initially as some pain that I felt in my heart that I hadn't given myself the time to feel and acknowledge. And then my guide said, okay, you need to write this letter to bring closure to your voice, to your emotions, to your feelings. And through writing that letter, it allowed me to uncover some shadow work, some things about myself that had allowed me to stay in a situation that was not serving my highest good. That is shadow work, accepting our role and responsibility in even the most painful and traumatic of experiences. Now, I'm not saying my past relationship was a painful and traumatic experience. There are other situations in my life, abuse, and other things around my father, so many things like that are painful, but I have been and still am working through them. But through that work, I'm able to still take responsibility in some way in that situation, but not from the standpoint of blaming myself, because that is where we can fall into that trap as well. So as you can see, shadow work is multi-layered. It's complex. But we can start off by, I'm going back to this really beautiful AI description of having a look at our fears. What are we afraid of? Remember in my interview with my shadow, what am I afraid of? You know, the singing, using my voice. Judgments. Why and what about others are we judging, and how does that reflect upon ourselves? Our triggers, what triggers us to feel big emotions. Remember, shadow work is emotional healing. What causes anger? What causes sadness? What causes defensiveness? Where is that coming from within? Where's that coming from within? What you dislike about others, what you dislike about yourself. Why? And how past experiences have shaped your present reactions. So it really is self-inquiry work. It's like a magical mystery journey of collecting all of these little relics to put them in a puzzle piece to essentially make ourselves back to whole and complete once again. Not that we were ever broken. We've just lost parts of ourselves into the depths of the shadows that reside within us, and we're shining light onto them so that they can bloom and grow and feel beautiful once again, because all of us, every part of ourselves in its full entirety, is beautiful and magnificent and enough. There is nothing wrong with us. Society, social media, capitalism, patriarchy, the governments, celebrity worship, all of these external voices, if you like, and masks want us to be in a perpetual mindset that something is innately wrong with us. And this is the real beauty of the empowerment of shadow work, is that we realize that everything about us is beautiful and incredible and perfect exactly the way that we are. Okay, so we're going to move on to part 2. So what I'm going to do this with you so that you can have an experience of me sharing and me giving a voice to my shadow once again. But this is going to be in a more introspective way, in a more meditative way. So what you can do first of all, if you like, is just close your eyes with me and just listen as I ask these questions, and I will answer them for myself. I've written down 4 questions that I feel are quite juicy to start off with for shadow work. And remember, we're trying to give our shadow a voice. And if you want to join in with this interactively, what I'll do is when I've asked the question, I will take some time before I answer. So when you hear the question, if you want to pause the video and then have your hands on your heart and actually repeat the question out loud. Remember, speaking to yourself out loud, say the question out loud, repeating it, and see what comes through. And once you've done that, then you can continue with the video and continue the questions. So that's how I would suggest that you do this. Yeah, and let me know your experiences. Let me know what comes through for you in the comments. I'd love to know. I'd love to know your reflections. Let me know what you think of my shadows. Okay, so question number 1. What traits do I most dislike in other people? And what does this reveal about me? So, traits that I dislike about other people. I dislike it when other people, are very loud and talk a lot and really consume the space with their energy. People who are perhaps the centre of attention, and don't let others talk, who interrupt. And what does this reveal about me? Perhaps this reveals that I feel like, or have felt like in my past, that my voice isn't heard, and that my voice isn't heard. It also reveals that there's a part of me that probably yearns to be more of that extroverted type, recognizing that I am introverted and I do really enjoy solitude and group situations. Group social gatherings or business meetings are not a comfortable environment for me. So recognizing that perhaps a trait that I dislike in someone else is because I recognize that it is not a part of me that comes so naturally or easily. Something else that I seem to dislike about other people is when people keep asking me for money. And obviously this could be just people selling things, doing their marketing, doing their hustle, or if I've bought something off someone or someone's lent me money and they keep asking for it. And I feel that the second part of that reveals about me that I don't like it because I want people to find me trustworthy. There's a wounded part of me that wants to feel trustworthy and loyal. And the first part, why it annoys me when people are constantly trying to sell me things. Perhaps there's a part of me that wishes that I could be so fierce with my own self-marketing. Yeah, and it probably just reflects my relationship towards business and separating a friendly conversation with a monetary transaction and seeing the two things as separate rather than feeling a different way about it, just seeing it merely for the transaction that it is. Okay. Question number 2. What makes me feel uncomfortable, defensive, or self-conscious? So, something that makes me feel self-conscious is if people comment on my weight. Now, I'm very comfortable with my body and with my appearance now. However, there have been many times in my past where my weight has fluctuated from being very underweight to overweight and in between. So there is a unhealthy relationship to that, and being called fat as a child. So that definitely is something that would make me feel self-conscious if someone commented on my weight or the shape or appearance of my body. Even though I love how I look, there's still a little bit of a wound of vulnerability there. And then what was the other one? Uncomfortable or defensive? This is more of a difficult one. Actually, okay, yeah, I do get or feel uncomfortable or defensive when people who feel that they are in a place of authority around me question my choice of lifestyle or career path, which to a lot of people could be seen as alternative, or the black sheep. And yeah, this makes me uncomfortable. It makes me defensive because, you know, there's so many layers of wanting to be more successful and having more to show for myself, when in reality I'm already enough, but I still feel uncomfortable or defensive around this. So there's definitely more work there on building up my morals and my moral strength from within. Okay, question number 3. What self-sabotaging behaviours do I engage in? Well, one self-sabotaging behaviour which I have spoken about many times, which I have now ended because I have ended this karmic pattern, but that would be going back into old habits of old versions of me, like drinking or partying or taking drugs or eating unhealthy food or being in toxic relationships. That was always a huge self-sabotage for me. Another one I would say is that I tend to work really hard and put my heart and soul into a project or something for another person. But then when it comes to working for myself, and this is definitely something I've been working on this year with my business and creating content, but when it comes to pouring that hard work and dedication into working for myself, there has been in the past a block there. So I would self-sabotage by either finding an excuse to do something else, finding a way out of it, or making excuses, letting the fears take over. Yeah, I was going to say something else, but it's not really a self-sabotage, so I'll leave it at that one for now. And number 4. What childhood beliefs or experiences still affect me? Well, probably the forefront. This is one that I covered in the interview with my shadow, is that my dad left my mum when she was pregnant with me, So I've never met him, never had any emotional or financial support from him whatsoever. He always expressed that he wishes to have nothing to do with either of our lives. So yeah, I've always had to live with that, and the result of having a single parent and the imbalance and the stresses and strains that come along with that. So yeah, I would say mother and father woundings are the biggest things that have played out and still play out in my life to this day, but uncovering all of the different layers and complexities that come along with that, but also learning to really love and accept both of them as individuals who were just acting from their own shadows and their own woundings, and to really just shine a light of love and compassion on both of those experiences. Recognizing, those feelings of, in my past, I've always ran away. So I've always done what my dad did. Abandonment, feeling abandoned, feeling not good enough. So that was, I could have gone into a lot more detail, and I would say if you really want to get into it, for those 4 questions, try and carve out an hour, so you can spend about 20 minutes on each question, 15 minutes on each question. Take your time. Emotions are more than likely to come through. I held it together for this one because, like I said, this is something that I have been doing for quite a long time. But when I am doing this in a way that's healing for myself, I always cry or scream or let some kind of emotion out. So do it at a time and in a space where you can hold yourself in that. And if you do want to invite someone who you trust, a loved one, to sit with you and hold you and take care of you, that can really be a beautiful way to work through this as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video today. I hope that was helpful for you. If you do have very, very traumatic childhood experiences, therapy can be great. Trauma-informed coaches. If you're a woman, seek out a woman so that you feel safe to share those stories if they are abusive, or anything along those lines. Find someone who is trauma-informed that you can have a loving and a safely held conversation with. When we are doing this work, we only really will find it beneficial to share it with people who are open to listen and to not give us advice and not dump things on us. This is about our own releasing and our own empowerment and our own inner standing. So yes, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Share your experience in the comments, any questions or ideas that you would like me to explore in the next coffee shop chat. Not sure when that will be now because we're coming up to the holiday period. But yeah, let me know. I love your feedback. Sending you so much love from my heart to yours, and have the most magical, magical time as this year draws towards an end. But we are in the midst of darkness, so lots of shadow work to be done. Yeah, and you've got this.